Broadcasting a new paradigm on the One Network.
At this pivotal time in humanity's evolution, we are beginning to remember our organic technology. A technology, when used correctly, can create an experience that the majority of the people the world over want to live. It is time to use this technology consciously for our own benefit and healing, and no longer unconsciously for our own demise. We are multi-dimensional creators, creating both our own personal experience and our collective experience moment to moment. We invite you to join us as we reawaken this technology through experiment and experience our power to create and manifest.
Hello and welcome to the Collective Imagination for this week. Once again, we've got Brian Kelly and Dee. Welcome.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our living room. Good to be here with y'all. Sorry we can't bring you in live for calling, but that should be coming soon, pending a permanent residency of the radio shows. But now we are here in our lovely living room.
Although it looks more like a dining room today.
And I know that you can only see white walls, but I assure you it's beautiful. One of these days we'll give you a tour. Welcome to the show.
Say hi, Dee.
Hello, darlings. Yeah, it's great to be back. We're going off the cuff as usual today, I think.
Mm-hmm. Although, one of the things that has been kind of prevalent in discussion and in our doings of late has been the whole concept of iTech.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came to rethinking this whole network and rethinking the platforms and the way we were doing things in the shows and reworking it all, it really took I spent a lot of time thinking about what was still relevant to bring forward. And the collective imagination as a show and as a concept was top of the list. And it was one of those things where you don't always know exactly why you're doing something at the time. It only becomes apparent later on. When I look back at the description that I wrote for this show, it was focused primarily at the time on imagination and how that is an internal technology. But since then, our concepts of our internal technology and the language around it has grown so much that this discussion, now more than ever, I feel like, is where our focus needs to be.
Extremely relevant for this moment.
Extremely relevant. And the idea that we are multidimensional creators, and that it's my personal belief at least, that those that we have lovingly been calling our partners in contrast don't have the same ability that we do to create in this reality. And that we have been used and manipulated in order to create the reality that they want. They use us to create what they want.
Yeah.
And again, when I look back at what I wrote, that it's time to use this technology for our own benefit instead of unconsciously for our own demise. Mm-hmm. So here we are, to me, in a spot where so many people are experiencing things within their bodies and within their realities that tells them this internal tech is real, that tells them it's getting stronger, it's coming online, it's activating whatever words you want to use. And even in the last 24 hours, thanks to discussions that we've had, our ideas, our concepts of how to bring this on, for me, has expanded yet again. And I know within every cell in my body that every single complaint, argument, or woe that people express about this world is completely irrelevant the moment iTech is switched on for everyone. I cannot conceive of one problem in this world that is not eradicated by it.
Can I just make little proviso into that? Is not so much that iTech is switched on, because we know it already is.
Yes.
But when it becomes extremely apparent in physicality in a way that is unquestionable to anyone. Because that's the way it is now, is perception of people look at this, they go, oh, well, they make excuses. Oh, well, that could have happened to this or this, and it doesn't change what is. If you're looking for this and you get this, and you've created that to appear in whatever way, shape, or form it does, is that not manifestation?
I think for me, the light. It's about, the key is about retraining the mind of what's possible.
Yeah.
You know, imagination is a limitless concept with no borders or boundaries and with a limitless amount of potential. But what they've done is they've indoctrinated humanity to believe that imagination has to be confined into a limited space, where people understand the power of imagination, but they put that power of imagination into a preconceived notion of what's possible and what's impossible. And so that they're trained to keep that potential within a certain limited belief and understanding of what they're capable of. And that's part of the human condition. So it's like, for me, it's like, we were talking about before we came on the show that we were going to talk about iTech, and I was like, well, I don't know if I could talk about iTech for 2 hours. Because, for me, I know it's on already, and I know I can tap into it, but where I hit a block for me personally is, how do I go from this understanding that these things are possible to actual implementation of these things that I know that we're capable of?
Because it's part of a bigger picture and part of a bigger conversation, which is, who the hell are we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when we look at that, okay, so let's look at that. I keep referring to it because it actually was about so much more than just the UCC filings, that Beast Vision that I had.
Yeah.
What it did was show me the framework, the actual structure of this reality that we're in. And that each and every one of us here is in fact multidimensional. And there is an aspect of us, a stream of our consciousness that goes right back to source, heaven, paradise, whatever you want to call it. And it's unbroken. There may well be a veil or a filter that separates these, or gives the illusion of separating.
It gives the illusion of, yeah.
Yet I know it's a continuous stream. So if I am always connected to that aspect of me that's actually located in source, and in other dimensional states, whether it's in dream state or meditation or imagination or whatever you want to call it, I can do certain things, then why can't I hear? The separation has to be purely a belief system.
You create your reality around you.
Yeah.
And this is one of the, we got into this when we talked about Sasha and Heather 2 weeks ago. We talked about the short waves and the long waves. And if you keep people continuously focused on those short waves of fear, anger, etc., there is no room left to concentrate or put energy towards imagination about thinking outside the box. So if you continuously are being restructured from the time you are that high through TV, video games, the adults around you, school, church,
movies,
political agendas, media,
social structures.
It brings it all up. So then to think outside the box does become impossible, because it can't possibly be possible, because my dad, my priest, my teacher, my doctor, my governor has said, no, it can't be possible. So therefore, it can't be.
I didn't see it on the news, therefore it's not real.
Yes.
That's the thing I've been looking at for me inside myself just over the course of the last year. We have all these, we as the quote unquote truth seekers or alternative media folk or whatever, or people that follow alternative media, we're constantly looking at the sleeping public and saying, oh, I want to shake and I want to wake these people up. And, we feel we have this sense that because we're aware of conditioning and programming, that we're outside of it. And when you really start to dive in, you realize that the harder you look at yourself, the more you realize how deep your own subconscious programming goes, and how many places in our lives that we have the potential to really break free from that. And so I've stopped focusing on others and, what can I do to kind of shake and wake people up. It's more, now I'm looking in the mirror, now I'm starting to analyze when I have trigger responses to situations, circumstances, and events in my life, looking at it and saying, where within this response is there programming for me that needs to be let go of? Because if it wasn't there, I'd be manifesting apples in my hand or tomatoes or whatever example you use. I'd be flying around. We'd be all speaking telepathically. So it becomes this really extremely personal journey, and
you catch yourselves in the things that you say unconsciously that are exactly that. They're little programming tweaks and you hear the words come out of your mouth and then you look at it and go, did I really say that? Oh my God, if that's not programming right there.
But you notice it as a parent more than ever, because they give you so many opportunities to catch yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's simple things like, the kids running in a spot where or you think they're going to go over and they're going to hurt themselves.
Yeah.
So what do? You reinforce that belief.
Yep.
Don't do that. This is what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And even purely from what we know of, like more of a psychology perspective, kids hear the last thing you said.
Yep.
So when you say don't run,
they hear run.
Mm-hmm.
They also hear hurt yourself.
Hurt yourself.
Run, hurt yourself.
And
there you go.
Like,
there's a command.
Those little snippets go in as commands, and they follow them perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of that looks like fun. I know I'm confident and I have an expectation that you'll be fine. Again, that takes us back to that bloody book.
Yeah.
The continuum concept.
Yeah.
About holding a certain expectation.
Yeah.
And the kids live up to that expectation. Mm-hmm. They've got kids sitting around the edges of pits playing with machetes with a complete expectation that they will be fine. They're not sitting around worried, going, oh, don't do that, you'll hurt yourself. And no one ever gets hurt.
And it's so funny you say that, because just yesterday I walked into the kitchen. I have a knife that I use in the kitchen.
I was there for that.
It's a machete, really. It is a glorified machete, but it's my favorite knife. And I found one of the kids using it to cut a slice of bread. And you're literally like, ah!
It's like this size child.
Don't touch Danny's knife. None of you kids are allowed. You're going to cut your hand off. And then you can step back and go, seriously, did I just say that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you guys a lesson on how to use a knife properly. Haven't done it yet, but I will.
I keep coming around back to we're going to talk about iTech, we're going to focus on iTech. Well, what does that look like? What are practical things that we or people can do? Whitney was a classic example. She'd run around here and that's all that Whitney talks about.
Yeah.
I just want to unlock my iTech. And I think that it falls into the same category of Well, it's a little bit different, but it's kind of like somebody asking themselves, what is it that makes me happy? I'm not really sure. I don't really know what to look for to make myself, it's like looking outside yourself. So what are things that people can do to really have this be more of a central focus? I mean, for me, it requires of canceling out of all the things that I no longer want to be my focus. Yeah. And I start there. And then through the process of elimination, I get to where I do want to focus my energy. It's like for me, I know that, it's interesting. It's no coincidence that we came back with the Collective Imagination show and we chose this show as opposed to the One People show, because it's more in line with where our energy is right now. Mm-hmm. I have no interest in fighting debt collectors, fighting government, resisting, the elite or the Illuminati or whatever. I'm done. That was so last year. That was so last year. I even put a Facebook post up in Brian Kelly's newsroom asking people for questions before this, and there's still questions that are coming through of how do I go about exercising this such and such document to free myself, and it's just like
if I'm in court, what do I say when they ask me this?
Yeah, for like I use an example. I was with Jake Ducey out on the beach before I moved out of San Diego, and I was trying to kind of give him an explanation of some of the work that we were doing or whatever, and I drew a circle in the sand. And I said, and I stood inside of it, and I said, this circle represents all of the aspects of control, that is kind of forced upon society. And I said, there's so many people that live inside this circle that are trying to punch their way out and kick their way out and slash and push and break the wall down. And then I just stood up and stepped outside of it.
Yep.
And it's that easy. I just choose no longer to engage. And when you kind of make that conclusion for yourself that the answer, it doesn't necessarily have to be fighting the resistance. It's just not even paying attention, paying any energy into that.
That's easy when you let go of all attachments. And this was actually something that I was going to kind of touch on last week, but conversation steered otherwise. Which was, there's no reason to go into a courtroom and fight unless you're attached to holding on to what it is they want to take off you. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to get into a paperwork war with the bank or anybody unless you're attached to holding on to what it is they want to take off you. Mm-hmm. And I get that for some people it might be their home. Yeah. And they feel the absolute sense of
I've lived here
responsibility
20
to
years.
take care of children or whatever. But that aspect, that very thing. But I've worked for this for years, and I've put all this time, energy, and money into this thing. I'm not letting some bastard come and take it. Yeah. Well, if you understand that it's not yours at all, mm-hmm. no matter how many years, sweat, labour, and money you've put into it. Even if you've paid the damn thing off, you have to let go at that point of attachment to anything. Mm-hmm. And when you can get to that, the need to fight just goes.
Well, I've told this story before. I know you're just about to talk, but so relevant. That saying, I can't remember exactly how it goes. They say when you lost everything, when you got nothing else to lose, only then you are free. I had that experience. I had that experience in 2008 when I lost my business. Mm-hmm. Here I am. I got working in the mortgage industry of all places. What a contrast where I am now. Doing well, my own office, my own house, my own staff, making good money, and all of a sudden, within the matter, I went on a trip to Cabo San Lucas. I came back, and the whole banking system was collapsing. Yeah. And everyone's like, dude, I hope you didn't spend too much money while you're out there because shit has hit the fan. And that was the beginning of the end of that business. And I was stressed. I was worried. Everything started just to crumble. And here I am living in this house. I've told the story on the radio before. It's worth telling again because it's such a pivotal moment in my expansion. And I'm living in a house, I'm driving a car around, I could barely put gas in, a brand new Mercedes, and I'm dumping change out to just put a couple dollars in to get to Jack in the Box to buy a hamburger. And literally am living in a house, haven't paid, mortgage for 6 months, cooking pancakes over the fire over the gas because the electricity was turned off. And not a dollar to my name, literally. And I had this aha moment where I realized I wasn't going to die. And I realized that if this is the worst it could get, it's not that bad. It was like I was free because I didn't give a shit about my house. I didn't give a shit about my car. I didn't give a shit about my business. All I cared about is I had a plate of pancakes. And that was awesome. And it was in that moment that I realized everything that I was working toward was an illusion that was no longer important to me. And all of a sudden, my life that was going this way went whoop, and I started to crack open. And ever since then, any time where I've thought it was bad, where I was, oh man, I have no money, what's going on? I look back to that. I don't even want to call it the dark night of the soul because it was the opposite.
The light night of the soul.
Yes. And from then on, I realized that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what some court tries to do to me. It doesn't matter what the police want to come in and try to do, or the government. They win when you have fear about what power they potentially can have over you or how much they control you. And if there is no fear, what do you have to lose?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And so it's just like now, that experience, it drives what energy I'm willing to put into situations where, I'm at a choice point. Because every moment we have a choice. We have a series of choices that we can make. And,
you guys can't see that. That was one of the dogs just came in and decided he was going to plunk himself down in front of the camera, and Darius just had to drag her out by a hind leg. So it's a moment of humor.
So once you're free, in conclusion of what I was about to say, once you're free from all that, then you can figure out, okay, what is important to me? What areas of my life do I want to put my energy into? Mm-hmm. If it's not going to be my financial success or my career, nothing was wrong with those things. If you want to be financially successful, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to have a successful career, there's nothing wrong with that. But it requires everybody on an individual level to look at their life.
Absolutely.
And figure out, what is it that I do want to focus my energy on?
What matters too. Well, yeah. How do you define success? And how that changes over the years as you go through various progressions of the light night of the soul.
Mm-hmm. The three of us could either represent three really successful people or three of the biggest failures you've ever come across, depending on the perspective. Yeah. I mean, none of us have got any money.
Nope. Nope. Don't even have money to buy shoes. That's right.
And yet, we're happy.
Yeah.
We're giving our energy to something we all feel, is important, that we're passionate about, So, by whose definition of success?
Mm-hmm. We talk about that hanging on to things, right? So, I know we're all the same in the fact that we've gone through various projects that we've been involved in, various professional aspects of our life where we've done this and we've done this and done this. And there are those who would look back and say, but you gave up this, and then you did this for a while, but then you gave up this. But in the end of it, it leads to where we are now. So for me, I could look back on various things that I've done in my past, various organizations I've set up, various groups I've worked with and founded, and say, and then you left this and left this. But they served their purpose. And for me, my success now is measured in the level of happiness.
It's actually very similar to what Heather was saying the other week about how going into the courtroom for her, what that was really all about. It wasn't about winning, it wasn't about revenue stream, reputation, any of those things. It was about going and collect the data and leave.
Yep.
And I look back at all the things I've done And I feel exactly the same way about it. I've learned exactly what I needed to,
Yep.
or made the connection that I needed to.
Yep.
And no matter how passionate and driven I was to go down that path in the first place, I get to that point and then suddenly it's all gone.
Yep.
I don't want to take another step
Because
in
you're
that
done with
direction
it.
because
and it's
I
like
got
you,
what I needed.
you intrinsically
on to
know
the
it's like,
next thing.
okay, well, I'm done with this now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm now going to move on to the next project where I'm going to learn something else. And it always seems to be hindsight that you can look back and go, oh, look at the experience I got from this. Oh, and I learned that. And I met this person and that enabled me to do this.
Again, it's, whose interpretation. I could be seen as someone who never finishes something they start. Or I could be...
That's all of us. Everyone raise your hand.
As of late.
Or have the perspective I do. And I don't regret any of those things that I've done because, wow, I've done a lot of things.
Yeah.
And
You and I
know
had this conversation.
In some respects, I'm a kind of jack of all trades and master of none, but I know enough to serve me in any moment to move forward.
Yep.
Like even all the years of research I did on the whole straw man thing.
Yep.
I learned just enough to know what I was looking at when I saw the filings.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for me is with the whole Ebola thing. I've been laughing because I'm back onto researching the Ebola thing again. I'll be doing a live show or a recorded show on that subject very soon. All that interest I've had for 20 years about hemorrhagic fevers, then it went into vaccines, etc., etc. I sat down and now I can read news articles and go, seriously? Because you've got this information up here in your head and you pull it all out and you go, smallpox, seriously? Oh my God, I can't believe they're going there. People may have thought it was crazy that I sat there and read medical articles 18 years ago about Ebola and smallpox, and yet now I have the information in here at my fingertips as soon as I read something. So it stood me in good stead for this moment.
Well, it really dissolves the whole concept of failure, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
if you understand that everything happens for a reason, you truly believe that. Because if you have faith in it, but you don't necessarily buy into it, then you're always going to be looking at situations, circumstances, and events as potentially coincidental, as opposed to entirely synchronistic. Because you're always going to get from something what you're designed to get out of it, whether you see the whole thing to completion. Completion might look like out here when in fact you're only supposed to spend 3 weeks in that project.
Yeah.
It's like I look at I beat myself up for a little while with the whole water engine thing. Because I promoted it and I got all the right people involved and all that huge, stuff came out with Paul Pantone and then the Opal Tour. And I was like, oh my God, I said I was going to do this. I couldn't come through. And then I got to the point and I realized what came out of that was awesome. It caused everybody to start to question the concept of ownership, and we went down patents and trademarks and copyrights and all that stuff, and it inspired this incredible conversation, and it highlighted a lot of what is possible within the energy realm, which ultimately kind of exploded that whole line of interest in a lot of people. So I wanted to be able to fulfill my promises to people, but I did everything that I could. And looking back on it now, I see the purpose. And I think that the mark of our progress for humanity is being able to not have a long time lapse between being able to see the light and being in that area of confusion.
Yeah.
It's kind of like our ability to bounce back from things that happen that piss us off. Yeah. Where you go, okay, I could wait till hindsight comes in a month, or I can say, okay, how long am I going to let this run its course? I'm over it. So what does iTech look like? We've talked about it a bunch. What do you think is going to be the first wave of ability? Human meat suitability that's going to manifest as a result of where we've been as
what do we know is already
species.
Working? What do we know that we're already doing?
We already know we're manifesting. All of us.
Mm-hmm.
We are master manifestors. All of us. We've proven it to ourselves over and over again. That anything we
Telepathy
have
is also
needed.
one. I mean,
Yeah,
we all talk
yeah,
to
the
each
ongoing
other.
joke, yes. It's, I need Lisa to come downstairs. Lisa, where are you? Next thing you know, Lisa's
To the point
downstairs.
where we complete each other's
Sentences.
Sandwiches?
No, but I am hungry.
Yeah, I am too. We should not have filmed this at dinner time.
But what are we? Okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about telepathy. We're talking about, and I know people are experiencing that.
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
talking about manifesting, and we're talking about taking it from the realm of I want this, and then 3 weeks later someone turns up with it, to I want this. There it is.
And there it is.
And if we understand that everything is made up of the same stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all abundant in creation, what is stopping the force of our thoughts bringing those elements together and manifest and creating it right there in front of us? What is stopping it?
I wrote an article a little while ago about logic and basically the human template that we've been built around. Our brains have been built around and programmed into this logic format that gravity is a law, and mass is this is what mass is, and energy is this, and the cosmos works like this, etc., etc. And we have these building blocks all the way around our brain. And the one thing I every time I get into conversations about this, it always swings back. Is the very first time I watched Ralph Rain in the video, and he talked about that initial test flight for their flying saucer, and that they got in, and then they got out, and their brain literally canceled the entire experience. Now, they had proof in their pockets that they'd been somewhere,
Rocks
and
and
they'd
stuff.
done something. They'd obviously gone someplace, gotten out of the ship, picked up rocks and pebbles and grass, put it in their pockets, got back on the ship, and came back. Their brain, because it is illogical, it cannot possibly fall with any of those little blocks of logic, wiped it out. So it comes down to, I think, for a lot of things, it's a matter of breaking through that program belief system that says gravity holds us down, therefore we cannot fly.
How do we do that? So how do we
Telepathy.
start to break down these barriers?
I
This is
don't
what I
know.
want
It
to talk
reminds me
about.
of the story of the Native Americans that were on the coast, and the ships were coming in with all the white people on them.
Yep.
And the chief couldn't see the ships because it was so outside of his frame of reference of experience that it just literally didn't exist. And I have trouble really with that concept because we see things that we've never seen before every day.
Yeah.
I think that to answer your question though, Lisa, when it comes to manifestation, that probably one of the most integral areas to look at would be this collective buy-in of lack consciousness.
Oh, yes.
You know, I was thinking on the beach just the other night, 2 nights ago, it's like, I can't stand the words in this order, there's not enough. It bugs me. You know, we've been trained to believe that there's not enough money, that there's not enough food, that there's not enough water,
land,
there's not enough land,
air,
there's not enough oil.
Yeah.
You know, there's not enough this, there's all these things, there's not enough, and it's going to ultimately be the mechanism that causes humanity to break down and lead to our extinction. There's that whole line of stuff, right?
That comes into that conversation. We say the words that we use that you don't even realize. When the kids are like, I want another sandwich. No, there's not enough bread for another sandwich.
Yeah.
There it is, right there. You've just said it. There's not enough bread. Or there's not enough
Milk for coffee.
milk for coffee. There's not enough milk for you to have a second bowl of cereal.
There's not enough
Whatever.
water in the well.
There's not enough. Don't even go there. You guys missed that fiasco.
I know. I timed my vacation perfectly.
Yes, apparently.
So, you know, if you want to unlock, you know, I was asking Lisa before, I said, iTech's been around for a long time. You got all these documented cases throughout history of individuals and saints and sages and miracle makers that have unlocked these abilities that have shown them that they're working. And her response was, yeah, but not for the collective. So if you want to affect the collective, you have to affect the way that the collective mindset works. When enough people believe that you can do something, then all of a sudden the potentiality of actually being able to do those things, it gets lifted up a few notches.
So here's the thing: if you look at people
possible.
like Chris Angel
Yeah.
and Dynamo.
Yeah.
Now, I've watched hours and hours of video, both of them, especially Dynamo. And some of the stuff that he does, I've sat there and gone, yeah, he's actually doing that.
That's not a trick.
This is not trick photography. This isn't, some little wires and mirrors, etc. This is happening. And you sit there and you say, but they hide it behind this
That's the only way they
veneer
can-
of illusion. It's an illusion. It's David Copperfield illusion, right? There are people out there who can do this stuff. When I lived in Southeast Asia, I met gurus from India who talked about the things that these monks would do living on a mountaintop. Incredible feats.
But that's
So how do you bring that out?
because they're special, right? And they spent 20 years meditating in a cave on a mountaintop to do it.
Yep.
That belief alone has to go,
Yes.
because if they can, anybody can.
Yep.
And I think that's what's happening now. Is that maybe up until a certain point in time, you really did have to have that kind of focus in order to do it, but not anymore.
No.
Not anymore.
Well, I think you look back at the story of Jesus, as an example. He, as far as I understand it anyways, because Jesus and I, well, we were buddies. We didn't spend a lot of time together, so I couldn't pick his brain on this matter. But
One of his homies?
Darius. He didn't want people to follow him. He wanted to show people what was possible. He didn't want a religion to be based around his philosophy.
Didn't he
and
say all
teaching.
these things I do, you can do and more?
Yeah, so you look at all these examples throughout history of these beings in density accomplishing these miracles, but I think we're limited in what we describe miracles as. There's the spectrum of what a miracle is so much vaster than the little boxes that we put around it. And
women who lift a car off of their child when there's an accident and literally just Superman, Incredible Hulk strength that happens in that moment.
I think there's something to the idea that what the eyes see and the ears hear, the mind believes, and that's why you have all of these prove it people. If I don't see it, it ain't real. And then you put them in front of a situation where they're watching that woman lift her car off her child, and all of a sudden those barriers, self-imposed barriers, limitations, and beliefs come crashing down.
Yeah. Now
And
you
I
have
think
to
that-
find a reason.
And I think that for me, if I had to kind of give my perspective on what the future might hold, there would need to be some kind of massive awakening in that regard, where all of a sudden you have a high concentration of people that whose beliefs have been shattered around what is within and what is outside the parameters of possibility.
Okay, so going back to the kind of the protocol that we used back in the beginning of this show when we first launched, and we would do experiments each week. We picked something live on the radio and we would do it. I know that we're pre-recording this and people are going to hear it tomorrow, but for those who are, we'd love to hear, I would love to hear at least, your experiences and your ideas around how we can actually unlock all of this. And by the time we get to do this live, which hopefully won't be too much longer, we'll have a running start on getting together as a collective and pushing this through. I mean, I think it does come down to, I don't want to say re-establishing, because it's established. It was never broken. Remembering that I exist multidimensionally right through to source. And strengthening that connection, perhaps, and allowing the remembering to happen all the way through, and allow the different aspects of me that are at these higher, lighter dimensional frequencies that do these things to push it through.
So here's something. We've talked about this before, and I think we touched on it when we were talking with Heather last week. Sometimes we look for the little confirmations, right? So we've talked about the kind of work we've been working on for the last year and a half that we don't talk about on radio shows or in articles, etc. And we are going to be...
We keep saying we're going.
I know, and it's... I need to get my computer back.
By the way.
It's not me. It's Heather. I always blame Heather. She's not even here to defend herself this week. We look for the little confirmations, and we've gone through many, many doings, as Heather calls it, where we have done things, jobs, if you will, in other realms, other realities. And then you look to find the little confirmations that help you sit there and go, wow, that is actually real, like holy crap. And you have those moments of wow, and we have had several, and we'll touch on those when we come through, something that we were specifically working on over a course of about 6 months, revolving around a specific person. And when the information over the course of 6 months came out of who this person was and what they were actually doing, there was a lot of shock. And then it was just about 2 months ago where all of a sudden we literally had physical confirmation from that person that confirmed everything that we had suspected and all the things that we'd been working on in that area. And you sit there and it's like this huge wow moment. So we talked about, we're going to do a recording about the desert from last year. There were so many people who were there with us in other states of reality or dimension, however you want to say it, who know. And I know that when we start talking about some of these things, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to all of a sudden go, oh, I remember. Oh, I was having a dream and this and this and this happened. And oh my God, I can't believe it. And then that gives them that little confirmation of like, yeah, that's real. Mm-hmm. What you see in that dream state is not just your imagination, your REM sleep, etc.
That word needs to be eliminated.
Exactly. It's not just your imagination. Yeah. It's just your imagination. Funnily enough, the kids are little ones. You watch them play and they use this incredible imagination. And there was a couple of days ago where my littlest guy, who's just 4, was playing a game where he had an invisibility cloak, which was, of course, invisible. And one of the other little kids took it from him. And he broke down into complete tears. He was an beside himself mess. And one of the older kids was like, it's just imagination. And I said, no, can you not see how it's not just imagination? You took his invisibility cloak. Do you think a 4-year-old is reacting in this complete heartbroken tears because it was just imagination? I said, now you need to go out there and make it better for him. And he was like, how am I supposed, it's just imagination. I said, and here's what you're going to do. You're going to go get an imaginary bag and give it to him so that he can put his invisibility cloak into the bag and then he can wear it on his belt so that he can keep it safe. And he was just, okay. And he went and he got like a plastic shopping bag. I was like, no. You have to imagine it. You imagine that bag and you give it to him. And he kind of looked at me and was like, okay. And he went over, 12-year-olds, you know. And he went over and he kind of was like, here, Kale, here's a bag, an invisible bag for you to put your invisibility cloak in so you don't lose it again. And Kale's face was just like, oh, thank you. And he took the bag and he put the cloak in the bag. And we showed him to tie it to his belt that was also invisible, then he would never lose it again. That child was the happiest child you've ever seen.
You should have told me you were looking for that. I got it right here. It's not my son, so he can have it back.
Now I know who to come to. I'm going to tell him. So, just imagination. It was absolutely real to Kale. Like, absolutely real to that 4-year-old what had happened. Just imagination.
That was like his dream you told me about yesterday.
Which
Fighting bad guys?
Oh, just a minute. I'm almost done. I'll just get this last bad guy.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, he was trying to wake up. I was like, Mom, no, I'm not done. I still got a couple more bad guys to take out.
Literally, it was when he crashed out when we came back from Santa, and he had fallen asleep in the taxi, and we could not wake him up. He slept for 4 hours in the middle of the day, and we're getting to dinner time. I was like, baby, you have to wake up. He was like, no, I'm not done yet. Just one more bad guy. Let me just finish this last bad guy.
You know, because of things like that, I've really started to pay much more attention to what the kids are saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like, oh, you know, I'm busy. It's you're like, wait, what'd you just say?
What did you just say?
Because you especially with the youngest ones,
Yep.
Adam and Kale specifically, because some of the stuff that comes out of their mouth sometimes, you really gotta double take, because you know you one side of you wants to say, well, it's just a 4-year-old, they're talking nonsense, and now I've realized that there's this whole other perspective that you know, they might have something really important to offer.
Oh, absolutely.
You look at that.
Last year in Tangier, we're sitting there on the couch, and we're watching one of the superhero movies. I can't remember which one. And my then 6-year-old is just playing like a DS, a Game Boy thing, and he's playing, and the superhero character is flying. And we're talking about flying, and Kale's all excited watching whoever it was fly. And Logan looks up from his DS. Actually, he doesn't even look up. He goes, yeah, Kale knows how to do that. He just forgot how. And just keeps playing. And what did you say? And he goes, yeah, Kale knows how to do that. He just forgot how. He just goes right on playing.
Mm-hmm.
You just forgot how.
I think that one of the elements in this is this concept of space-time. You know, it's like I'm looking at it and I'm thinking there's no coincidence to the fact that none of us ever know what day or what time it is anymore. I seldom do I ask what time it is. I don't have a watch. I got my invisible watch here, but the thing is broken on it, so it's broken. I don't have a phone anymore that I carry around that's constantly reminding me of what time
Half
it is.
of us don't have computers anymore.
I don't work in an office with a big circular clock on the wall where I'm constantly checking the hour. You know, we get stuck in this pattern of inability to believe something is possible because there's not enough time has lapsed yet. That's not possible to manifest something in your hand. It takes this much time in order to be able to figure out how to do that. And it's like, this got highlighted just for me yesterday because, you know, last week or whatever it was, we were talking about the old man.
Oh, well, yeah, I was just going to touch on that too.
And Heather made a comment and she said, you know, the old man, one of his jobs is to, you know, help collapse the system. He allegedly owns HSBC. He's a multi-dimensional being that's a couple thousand years old, spends most of his time in the other dimensions, but he does pop into 3D reality on occasion. And she said to him, 5 years and 50 years is all the same because he doesn't operate in space-time.
Continuum. Yep.
He doesn't operate in the time continuum, and that very well could make up one of the major elements of our programming, is this focus on the seasons and the time and the day and the 9 to the 5, and you know, we get married
weekends,
you know,
holidays,
yeah, you gotta, what day is it? Oh my God, is it Tuesday? I thought it was Wednesday. Oh, thank God, it's not Wednesday because I had this to do. You know, and I think that, you know, the fact that, you know, here we are, you know, in Oujda, Morocco together, and we all, for the most part, none of us ever know what time it is. Or what day for that matter.
The only day I know is Friday because you get different prayer calls on Friday. Other than Friday, I really don't know.
Unfortunately, we have the collective imagination show that keeps me on schedule, but you know, we don't record on that day, so you know, the days are still somewhat of a mystery. But if we're talking about breaking down the barriers, that very well could represent one of the major ones.
It's also probably the one area where everybody's had at least one experience they can draw on. You know, where 5 minutes lapsed, but it felt like half an hour or an hour, or 3 hours lapsed and it felt like 20 minutes. You know, everyone's got at least one experience where they know that they were time bent in some way. And we have sayings to explain it, to rationalise it, like time flies when you're having fun and all that shit. But it's not so much that you're having, I mean, if you go deeper than that, it's not just about the fact that you're having fun, it's about where your consciousness is at that time.
Yep.
And how focused you are. And whenever, you know, when someone's doing something they're passionate about, whether it's in the garden or painting or whatever, they can spend a day in there and it feels like just an hour's passed. So we can bend time, we can elongate time, we can shorten time, we can experience time in a different way than just tick, 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 tick.
And we are. I mean,
so let's start there.
That's the ongoing conversation in the Skype rooms and the chat rooms on Facebook of everyone talking about the fact of it's, and I know this because I checked the calendar today, it's the 8th of September. How the hell did that happen? How did it get to be September? What happened to July, August, and June? Because they just vanished.
We've talked about this before many times on shows, about how it looks like everybody on the planet has come to the consensus that time is in fact speeding up. And to me, that is what the main calendar was kind of measuring as well, is our concept, our consciousness, or our conscious measurement of time. Time hasn't changed. Our consciousness has. And how
in relation to time,
and how we perceive it. And that it's going to speed up till it gets to a 0 point where it's no longer relevant, is what I think is happening. But can we even speed up that process?
Absolutely.
Well, you look at that.
I think so.
Did you ever watch that 2012 documentary on YouTube? And it showed, I can't remember who the guy was, but his what he had written up on the board was all the epochs of time.
Ian Lungold?
I think so. And it was like 2.6 billion years, 6.6 million years, 500,000 years, 26,000 years. And these numbers are totally off, but that was the idea. I got you. And in each new epoch, they got shorter and shorter and shorter before the new one started. And that's basically the time schedule that leads to 0 point, where each one is in succession.
The other thing was that it's when you add to this, it's like the same amount of activity, or maybe what Terence McKenna would call novelty, happens in those time frames.
Yeah, which is why you have the last 100 years of the developments that we've had in science and technology. What we've experienced in the last 20 years has been we've had more breakthroughs than all the history of within this whole history of humanity in the last 20 years of the evolution of technology.
And let's throw a curveball into that. Imagine where we would be if Tesla and Russell and people like that had actually been allowed to freely create what they wanted to create. And work through that. Where would we be? So, I mean, think of how
even
fast...
considering the suppression. Yeah. This is why, it's funny, because before we jumped on here, I put that question in the Facebook room. It's like, if anybody has any questions, post them here. And one of them, the first one that came through is, what do you guys have to say about Nassar being announced on September 9th or September 13th? And we all just kind of went, ugh. It's
dates.
This whole dates
please,
thing,
don't give me a date.
And I feel like dates, I feel like the Nassar, the whole thing, and I'm just using Nassar as an example, could very well be a fabricated story to harvest hope.
Oh, absolutely.
Where it's like, okay, once this happens, then humanity will be free and we'll all be saved and we can all, do whatever we want that can bring us the maximum amount of happiness.
So the result is we continue to prolong or that sense of freedom.
I can't do the whole
if
faith
it's
thing
always
anymore.
just
right outside of reach.
It's funny because this morning I read Zap's update. Heather sent it to me, so I had a good giggle. And it's always this week and next week and next week. And for example, in the dinar world, the dinarian world, it's literally always next week. Well, then the next thing is this, and here's this window and this window. So now, of course, we've got September. End of the fiscal year for the United States. September 12th is the actual date, but no, it'll be pushed to September 30th because that'll be aligned with the end of the fiscal year. But when that doesn't happen, just like it didn't happen last year or the year before that, I know. Then it'll be the next specific window, and then it's always time, isn't it? It's always another week, another 2 days, 72 hours. God.
But when you buy into that stuff, because I've done it, you can literally physically feel the yearning and the longing and the anticipation. And
even the excitement, because you have the conversation like, oh, and when that happens, I'm going to have this, and then when I do this, well, then I can be able to do this, and then I'll put my money here, and I will be able to do this, and I'm going to do this, and then the excitement, and if that's not a harvesting tool, I don't know what is. Yeah. Just that.
You know, and you prove the theory to be accurate when you look at, I fell into the December 21st. I mean, that's all I cared about for a year leading up to it, and even longer than that, since 2010. I was on the 2012 December 21st train from October of 2010.
So was I.
And some people many years before that, and I can't even imagine, you know, what they experienced during that time. It's all personal experience. But you know, you take all these people that, you know, for example, you know, all the people that have bought into the dinar thing and the Nasara thing and all this, they've been told by the same people for sometimes years, proof's been around for a really long time, that it's going to be tomorrow, it's going to be next week, it's going to be next week, it's going to be next Friday, oh, it's got to be after the Chinese New Year, oh, well, there's Ramadan, and it's got to be after that.
Yeah, before Ramadan, after Ramadan.
The level of trust maintains even throughout that. It's like, at what point do you say, okay, if you're my friend and you tell me that you're going to clean the house, which I realize you never do, but if you told me, I'm just kidding. I'm going to get smacked later. Yeah. But if you told me every day that you were going to clean the house,
at some point you're going to call me.
After 4 or 5 days, probably, it's not going to take a year. No. I'm going to call you out pretty quickly. And there's that level of false trust that because things are so bad, if I don't have this to believe in, what am I left with? Where do I go from here? It's like all I've done is focus all of my time and energy on this Hail Mary. If it doesn't come through, what have I got?
The more hope you invest, the less, or the more reluctant you are to let it go.
Well, I've talked about that we have people who've invested so much time and so much energy into, name one, like you say, the dinar revaluation or Nasara or whatever, that to finally change and say, no, that's not what it is. It negates in your people's minds everything they've done for the last 2, 5, 10, 15 years. How can you do that?
So when was this Nasara thing originally? It was the 80s, wasn't it?
You got to go into the farm claims. If you go looking up the farm claims in Nasara, and that was, oh goodness, I can't even remember the dates now. But that in the early 80s was the last of the court cases, I believe. And that's for the prosperity packages, et cetera, et cetera.
So we are talking a big chunk of time.
Oh, a huge amount of
time.
For
some individuals, we would be talking the majority of their adult lives that have been following this and been told the same things.
There's a lot of theories that say, you know, the original Nasara was a real deal, and then the whole concept got hijacked.
Absolutely.
For manipulation
and I totally believe that. I actually really do believe that was what had happened, is it was basically hijacked as a tool to re-phoenix the system. Right, and that's why it was Nasara, and then it was changed now to Jasara, the global blah, 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 blah. But the other thing is this, we talk about resonating with people, right? So when you have these supposed gurus, like, you know, Proof was a perfect example before he passed. He resonated with people. His passion came through in such a, there were people who read his updates for years and looked forward to every Sunday getting that update because they resonated with him. His passion, his love, and his intrinsic genuineness came through. And this is in the case with a lot of these systems. It doesn't matter which one it is that you're looking at. The people who are heading up and reporting on genuinely are, they're being given this information. It's not that, I said a few weeks ago, it's not that Zap's intel is wrong. It's that what they're promising they're going to do isn't going to happen. And that's why they keep pressing the button on the RV and the historic bonds and all of this. And it's not going through. So it's when he's being told, this is happening this week, the historic bonds are going to be done this week, they genuinely believe it. That's what they're going to do.
They have to in order to be able to pass that on.
Yeah.
But
with the level
it can't happen.
Yeah.
It won't go through.
Their buy-in
regardless.
is ultimately the biggest selling factor.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but using this as an example, RVs, Nasara, or whatever, of a stepping stone in the expansion of consciousness. I mean, if you're somebody who has heavily invested in any of these, and I don't mean necessarily financially, I just mean in terms of hope, because you believe that A, it's real, what you'll end up with in your head is real, and that you'll then therefore be able to do A, B, C and D with it.
Yep.
Can we then use it as a launch pad, for example, to go beyond it, at least in terms of consciousness? And what happens if, touching on what we talked about last week, that people are having a hard time imagining how to exchange, how to create without that something tangible in their hand to do the exchange with.
Yeah.
And I'd be sitting here, I am sitting here, not because anybody's paying me.
Yeah.
Not because I'm getting any kind of tangible exchange. I'm not sitting here having this discussion with you guys, recording it, going to all the trouble that everybody goes to do it, because there's going to be something in my hand at some point. Even if I was, I'd still be here. I'm here either way.
Right.
And if people, I really do think people are genuine in terms of the projects that they want to do and the way they want to move forward once that stuff comes in. Can they start to imagine how to move anyway without it? Can they imagine what steps to take now, before it comes in, before they've got it in their hand? What can they do?
That's the biggest stumbling block, I think, is because I worked within, for example, that RV Nasara world for so long. I have met so many people and dealt with so many people, and 99% of the people who are involved are really fucking good people, who are people who have invested to change the world, who have invested because they have been quoted that it's a guy, really good friend of ours that transitioned in an accident months ago, and he had heavily invested and then became heavily involved in the intel side of it. And, he had his own little house and he had his business and he was a musician. That wasn't what it was about for him. For him, it was like he lived on the West Coast. He wanted to clean up the oceans, and he did years of research of how to do that, and he figured out it was going to cost this much money to clean up the mess from Fukushima that was coming across the ocean towards the West Coast. And so he invested enough to be able to do that job. And that's not a one-off. That's all these people are genuine in they want to help. They want to. Oh God, I was involved in a project for bringing relief to Greece 3 years ago. We had donations to come in, obviously, if the RV went, over $1.5 billion to go to Greece as a rescue in that situation. And this was people who were all just like, oh, we want to help. So, like you say,
This is
minus
bringing
the money.
something up though for me. There's that saying, just throw money at it, right? So, and I'm not thinking of any individuals
Yep.
at all. I'm just a concept.
Yep.
But the idea that if I've got the money, then I personally can just sit here and throw money at it. And I can pay that person to do that and that person to do that and pay that person for those goods and pay that, you know. I don't physically have to do a thing except throw money at it. What if
People got out.
people got up and, okay, maybe you want to clean the oceans and that's a huge undertaking. But just start by going down to the beach with a net
Picking up garbage.
and picking up garbage. And because what came to mind was that our little guy, our, you know, what people would call the town's crazy man.
He's our
Who's
village
not.
angel. Yes,
The
he's
village
so
idiot
awesome.
who's not an idiot
Not
at all.
even remotely.
It was actually, I think he saw Bill, American Ricky, started to clean up the rubbish that was in the roadway in the creek bed in front of his house. And from that point on, this guy who just literally walks up and down the main drag all day long,
Talking to
Talking to
talking to
himself.
himself, started doing it with bags and collecting rubbish and then burning the rubbish.
Yep. And he worked all summer long. That entire creek bed, which is like 200-300 meters long and quite wide, he cleaned up every single piece of rubbish. That by the time we got to high tourist season, there was no garbage other than what the wind blew in the night before, or etc.
I mean, the biggest obstacle, as far as I can see, is always going to be fear. You know, I've had so many conversations with people on Facebook and via email around this subject. They go, you know, I love that Alan Watts video. You know, do what you love. You know, if money was irrelevant, what would you do?
Yeah.
You know, do you want to teach people how to ride horses? Do you want to hike? You know, what is it that makes you happy? What is it that you want to do? And people go, well, you know, I hate my job.
If I just had money, I would.
If I hate my job, I can't quit because I don't want to live the lifestyle of a broke person. You know, and they paint this idea of what it means to live, you know, without money. And I know people that some of the things that people have said is that if I leave my job, then I'm not going to be able to live the kind of lifestyle that I want to live. I don't want to be. And it's like, okay, well, now you got to start looking at the attachments to your lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
It's like, are you going to, you know, continue to make yourself miserable at some job that you hate so you can have this lifestyle, or are you willing to, we talked about it in the previous shows, you're willing to take a leap of faith and trust that the universe will, you know, will provide the things that you want to manifest in your lives. And so there is that underlying sense of fear, whether it be a small lining or something vast that creeps in, and it's ultimately one of the driving forces that keeps people locked in and shackled into the things that they don't want to do in life. And how do we take action steps to be able to release that fear, whether it's conscious or subconscious?
Reprioritize. Right? I mean, that's the whole thing when you're taught from the time you're a child that you have to grow up and you've got to go to university and you've got to get a good job so that you can buy a house and get a car and go on a vacation and have 2.2 children and
So
a
you
dog
can
and a cat and a
retire
canary,
by the time
and you
you're
can
65.
retire and blah, blah, and you have your RRSPs or whatever the international equivalent of retirement savings bonds
Then you
are.
can be happy.
And then you can be happy, right? So how do you reprioritize what happiness is? And that's the biggest thing. There were people who came here to Austin over the last few months that, quite frankly, had a hard time with not having a 7-Eleven on the corner, or a Starbucks, who had a hard time with the idea of, whether it was, there was the hot water tank didn't always work, so maybe you had to have a cold shower, or maybe there wasn't a shower that day.
No water at all.
There was no water at all. And there were people who had really struggled with that. And you have those internal moments where you analyze that. I mean, I have in all the traveling I've done, because I've lived in so many different countries around the world, where you look at that and you say, okay, how important is that Starbucks cup of coffee, really? How important is getting some Dorito nacho chips?
Oh, those are good.
I know. I had some in Sota. Really. And when you look at it, what is better for you? What do you really find important in life? We had a conversation about moving, right? We've had it several times. And one of the things for me is I said, I want to be with my friends and my family here. Where I live, really, this doesn't matter in the end run. It's that we're with the people we love. We're doing what we want to do.
And we have internet.
And then we have internet. That would be a good one. That's really the
priority.
And in the conversation I had today with another friend of ours who's coming, that's what we said. Really, the only priority is internet. Other than that, really, no one gives a flying fuck where we go. Just as long as we've got good internet and we're all working together and continuing with what we have been doing.
Well, for me, I would say that one could make the argument that releasing fear equals internal technology. That
I think so.
The more we release our fears, whether conscious or subconscious, the more the possibilities open up for us to be able to bring in, or bring out, is probably a more accurate term, these innate abilities that we all have.
Well, I can absolutely 100% say the only thing that stops me from jumping off the roof and flying is the fear that I'll hit the ground.
Buy a really good umbrella.
Gravity is only a theory, right?
Sure.
You know this, right?
This is true.
It's
But
a law.
it's one that's so ingrained in me that, yeah.
Well, but isn't that exactly what it comes down to? Some things, like you said right at the very beginning when we talked about, you catch yourself in the things that you limit yourself with. You don't even realize it. So what are the things that limit us? Pretty much everything. Because it's so ingrained that you don't even realize, like you say, the law of gravity.
Well, fear is an interesting one to look at, because a lot of times we don't really know what we're afraid of.
Yep.
And so in order to be able to understand it, you have to follow it back to what is the actual source. Sometimes the source of our fear isn't even something that we even understand it to be.
No.
You know, we have this fear around not having any money. Well, is our fear not having any money, or is the fear that we are going to end up out in the street and not have a roof over our heads, or not have enough food, or whatever it is? And
is that based on any
Reality.
I mean, is it based on experience? What's it based on? That's what you're told happens?
I've had this conversation for the last 10 years over and over again. We have lived, Nick and I, paycheck to paycheck our entire relationship together. I have lived that way before Nick and I were together. And yet, no matter how broke we were, there was always food on the table. There was always a roof over our heads. There was always gas to put in the car. No matter how, it didn't matter how, like the bank balance was a big fat zero, always something would come through that would carry us through. And I've said, I refuse to fall into that whole money trap. And yet it's funny how it's been playing out actually over the last few months. But because I know I will never be without a roof over my head for me or my kids, and there will always be food on the table. It might be pasta with a milk and butter sauce for that night, but there will always be food on the table.
Yeah. I love how Sasha in our interview with him, he said, I'm broke and I fucking love it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go so far as saying I love being broke, but I will say that the key to my happiness is the absolute acceptance of where I am and what my bank balance is. You know, there's no resistance to, yeah, it can be difficult. You know, when you're on the road traveling home from Boom and you don't have a pot to pee in and you're just praying to the universe that you're going to make it to your next destination, please. But you always do.
You always do. You
always
guys got home, even
do.
though it was pretty desperate that morning when you called us. You still got home.
These guys,
and you had a big meal waiting for you.
I'm pointing to Blue Star now behind the camera. These guys showed up in Malaga and they showed me a handful of like 83 cents. They're like, this is what we got left. Like, how on earth did you make it here with a handful of change?
Yeah.
And then they had this whole story about, because driving through Europe is extremely expensive. You got tolls and you got gas and everything is just really expensive. And how many times do we have to be slapped in the face to finally get the message that no matter how dire it is perceived to be, that there's always going to be that relief that comes in when we need it most. It's like I've had that experience for myself personally so many times that the second I start to doubt it, I smack myself upside the head energetically, because I know how it always ends up. It always ends up that you don't. That it's a cliche. You're not always going to get what you want, but you'll always have what you need.
Yep.
Well, I think also too, just changing the language we use within our own little heads when we're talking to ourselves. One of the most common things that I found I say to myself is something about I'll always have enough. And the end result is, I always have just enough. So just changing that to, I will always have more than enough. And I've not, because this is new.
This is a really good point. You know what?
I've actually, just in the last week, had more than enough to do what I needed to do, or what I wanted to do. And not even just what I needed to do, what I wanted to do. So having more than enough to do what I want to do, instead of just enough to do what I need to do, is a completely different language to tell yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've seen the results.
Well, we go back to the whole the water issue, right? I catch myself all the time. I've done a load of laundry today. Okay, how many people have had showers? Okay. Do we have enough water for me to do one more load of laundry or to, whatever it is? And then
I can do a laundry or have a shower.
And you go, no, there is more than enough water. And there always is.
Yeah.
Once you got to the more than enough and not just enough.
And these realizations are so important, and that's one of the reasons I really love doing these shows, because we have all these personal aha moments, and we share them, and then people go, "Oh yeah," and that's where I've really started to put the majority of my focus into having these big breakthroughs for myself, because it goes back to the whole understanding and knowing this, that when you have it on an individual level, it automatically feeds into the collective.
Yep.
You don't even have to share it. You don't necessarily have to talk about it on the radio. You just have to experience it and feel it and know it from within, and then that is broadcasted out through our antenna that's connected to everything else and everybody else.
But when you do share, other people have a chance to see that perspective, because
And we're triggering each other all the time. I share.
and we do it continuously. It's like a daily thing where someone says one thing and you go, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that." Oh, that's the continuous conversations that go on around here, but not just around here, but around here.
I feel like what an aha moment really is what we could redefine it as. Oh shit, I knew that already.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the whole thing about that we keep learning, is that remembering isn't this sudden, oh, I remember. It's all of a sudden that moment comes when you never didn't know it before.
Yeah.
You know,
Because it how many things have we had over the last little while that you remember it, and yet in that remembering you've known it all along, like you said.
I'm just noticing how much I'm missing the interaction with the audience and the calls
Yeah.
and the chat rooms, and I mean, to me that's absolutely missing, and we need to get a location where we can do these shows live ASAP.
We're working on it, Sonic.
Here's
Dan
a
Alvin.
suggestion for next week. If you've got a chat room, right? If we tell people we will be recording this, and I don't know, we can interact a
At least
little
have a
bit
chat
with
room
them,
happening.
at least have a chat room that's going, or a Skype room or whatever. And if people know, okay, we're going to be recording between this time and this time, it gives us a chance to interact a bit.
But they won't be able to hear us.
Well, how about if you have a Skype thing going?
The internet here isn't even good enough
It's
for
not
that.
even that.
Are we really talking about this on?
Okay, no, it is good enough for that.
But
Remember,
well,
this is the
true.
people.
See,
okay,
there's a classic
we haven't
example of
even-
what I just did.
Okay, here's a classic example. We haven't paid the internet bill this month.
Oh God, this is weird.
No
Still?
one's paid.
No.
It still has not been paid, and yet we still have internet. Why? Because we have intended that we will have internet, and therefore we have internet, even though the bill hasn't been paid in a month and a half.
Well, the weirdest part is it went off for half a day,
Half a day,
and then
and then it just came back on.
back on. And you know what? I ain't never gonna pay that internet bill. You hear me, Rock Telecom? I ain't giving you your 500 dirham.
So
Now
there.
watch internet down.
Oh, don't! Seriously, you just said that?
Cancel that.
I'm just kidding. We will have perfect internet. It will be impeccable.
Yes.
And I will download movies tonight.
Awesome.
What we do have, in lieu of our live audience, is a couple of individuals, at least in the room. So, I'm going to start with you, Blue. Comments, questions, observations, anything you got.
Well, it's interesting because earlier I was going to give you the symbol of the phone and I was just going to be the dial-in. There's been so many moments I wanted to jump in, and I thought I too, as a listener, have missed the opportunity to interact with you.
Maybe we should film before a live
You wanna pull up
studio
a chair?
audience.
We could bring in guests.
We could do it. We have enough people here. We could just have a live studio audience.
You could, and it's your community. It's
Yeah.
our community that's here. I mean, I think they would love being here and being present. No, I didn't want to step in front of the camera because I wanted to be a call-in.
Okay.
So I thought just getting my audio, and of course I didn't get a chance to fix my hair.
You are wearing my shirt.
Neither
though.
did Lisa.
I did my hair. Notice I don't have a mohawk anymore.
I brushed my
Once
tell.
again, I do want to say though.
Hang on, you
and-
are standing in front of that one, though.
Oh,
No,
I
it's okay.
am. Oh, I'm
There
sorry.
you go.
Okay, but I did want to say, and I think I speak for you, for the entire community, is that once again, I think you're absolutely brilliant in the conversation and digging deep within yourselves and contributing your insights. I mean, over and over, that's been my experience. So I'm saying that for all of us. I know that a lot of people are going to sit here and listen and go, oh my gosh, I wish I could call in. I wish I could get you in the chat room. So I hope I can be some kind of a voice for that.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
I think we should definitely do the live studio audience next week.
Okay.
Something to play around with.
I think would be a lot of fun. We even have a second microphone so people can,
Did you want to touch on anything that we've talked about so far?
Yes, I would, but in response to what Dee's saying, I think if we keep it like this, and the participating audience from our community here speaks like I am, we'll check this, but I think the microphone's going to pick it up. It'll keep us kind of in that caller interaction and not have to accommodate the video right now with the wide screen that we don't have yet.
the green screen that is not here.
There was a couple of things that were shared about iTech, and I think that beliefs is a significant part of what is hindering us from even recognizing that when we are activated in our iTech.
Yeah.
Also, what you said earlier, Dee, about logic. iTech has no logic nor
None.
explanation as the one source.
Or laws of physics to govern it.
Eternal essence, yes. And I kept thinking about the Wingmaker materials, and some of the things that were shared was that it is that continual uncertainty and unknowingness that our iTech is going to emerge from. And they also have an article called The Art of the Genuine, which again reiterates it's the art of being in this moment now. So there is no thought process. And when we were talking about the laws of manifestation and not seeing, readily seeing something come into fruition, well, once again, that's our beliefs. What's to say that iTech has to show itself in any form at all?
So just the mere conversation around what does it look like is hindering it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
Limiting.
saying?
Yes.
Well, because
Yes.
we all imagine differently. So if I imagine I can fly, and that means that I have to have wings, therefore I've limited it because
Or
I
a
have
super cape.
or a superwoman cape. You limit it, and in that sharing, well, you wrote that article, and I love that article, and I've been quoting it for like a year and a half now, about that releasing expectations.
Oh, yeah.
And it is so true, is don't limit how something is going to come to you.
Be open to it.
Just be open to it. Does it matter if I can fly, I get wings, or a helicopter on my head, or no? It is what it is.
I've already figured out the solution for Lisa, just in this conversation.
Okay, shoot.
I'm going to get her an iPod, and I'm going to put it on loop, R. Kelly, I Believe I Can Fly, and she's just going to listen to it all day on repeat. And it'll just train her. Yeah,
Oh,
that'll
boy.
do it. That's pretty open to all the possibilities of flying. Thank
I
you,
just
R.
noticed
Kelly,
we
for
actually have a
that
third person in the room. I didn't see
classic
this.
hit.
Attilio's been hiding over there in the corner.
We got
Darius is
Papa-
over hiding over in this corner over
Papa
here.
Attilio, Darius, and we also have Laya the dog in the room.
Laya the dog.
Laya, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, just step about the same proximity I am from the microphone.
If anybody wants to talk. Well, I mean, those are all good points. You know, you think, we've talked about it before, this concept of manifestation. Dee always uses the example of a tomato,
Me and my tomato.
right? It's like we've proven the fact that if we want a tomato, we can manifest it and bring it into our reality a lot faster. The time lapse of the concept and the thought of manifestation of that which we want to manifest is getting in shorter and shorter and shorter, to where not as much time with, there it is again, has to go by in order for us to attract that which we want to or intend to create.
That
and
is
then
getting
sooner or
faster
later
and faster.
that gets to the point where boom, it's like
Yeah, but then you got to
There's
ask the
tomato.
question: why do you want the tomato?
It's just
she likes ketchup.
no.
Yeah, but, I mean, is it to eat? And do you need to do that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
how far do you go?
Well, there you go. It's a really good point, isn't it?
In the Wingmakers interview number 2, Dr. Neruda talks about. Actually, go out and read it if you haven't. If you're listening to this and you're really interested in the idea of manifestation, the interview number 2, Dr. Neruda, he actually talks about he manifests a ball of twine and then $10,000. And I realize you're just reading it and is it real and blah blah blah. But they have those guys in India. They hold out their hand. And then all of a sudden you have a pile of ash in their hand. That comes from where?
Yeah.
So I think that for a lot of people it's not necessarily a function of is it possible? It's more of a question of is it possible for me to do it?
Yeah. That's fine for you to do it. I mean, you can do it.
But I can't imagine how. So therefore
Lisa does yoga and meditates 18 hours a day, so that's why she can do it.
Who told you that?
I'm making it up as I go along, trust me.
must be the middle of the night.
No, but that's the truth. And actually, we've had that conversation too about the whole fact that all of us smoke, we all drink copious amounts of coffee. I don't think any of us really are vegetarians or vegans. I will eat chocolate bars any time of day that they want to drop into my lap.
Attilio is an aspiring raw foodie.
Yeah, aspiring, that's right. But there's that example, right? Is if someone like who doesn't meditate, who smokes a pack and a half a day, drinks coffee and doesn't really exercise, can do something like manifest a tomato, then doesn't that break down all the boundaries for anyone else to say, oh, they can do it because, they meditate or whatever. If the ordinary person turns around and go,
no, but how long, this whole new age realm, have we been told that you need to activate these chakras in these colours and do this pineal gland and do that?
I'm not hearing you.
And I was right
Raise your
there. I was down
frequencies.
all those roads.
Yep.
So I'm not pointing the finger at anybody by any means, but the whole idea that there is a formula, and I am going to name
way.
names now. Melchizedek, what's his name?
Drumvelo.
I love the guy, and his energy is beautiful, and he's had some incredibly good and profound and wonderful things to say over the years. But when he got to a point where he was describing the chakra system and the activation of it had to be so precise, and that if you don't do it exactly like this, you are actually condemned.
Yeah.
I think was the word he used. That I just went, whoa.
But that's that whole harvesting for me. And again, I'm not mentioning names. I'm talking about the whole, just the new age ascension movement. That in itself is a harvesting tool. It's a re-phoenixing of the system, right? If you tell everyone continuously, well, you have to, how many channeled messages? You must raise your frequencies up so that we can come down and see you. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't do it. We'll try again next month.
Not quite good enough.
Not quite good enough. You're just not good enough. And therefore, you got to try harder. You've got to work, do it this way. And you try every self-help program and every chakra meditation and every, so that's harvesting right there, right? And that's one of the things that just has never resonated with me at all. I can't meditate to save my fucking life.
Well,
My brain is far too busy. It never shuts up. So this whole idea of, sit in a corner and just allow your mind to go blank, it doesn't work.
well, here's the thing. You do it in your own way.
Absolute, and that's exactly what I was going to say.
You do it with a Coca-Cola and a cigarette in your hand.
Yep. No, I actually do it while I'm
you
cooking
don't necessarily
dinner.
have to be sitting in full lotus with your spine straight on your pillow at your meditation altar.
Look, I can do that part. That part's the easy part.
And I understand. It's interesting because now so more than ever, there's a lot of data that's coming out about the false pretense of the New Age and spirituality movement. That spirituality has become more so than opening yourself up to being a co-creator, that it's become more like a religion than anything else.
It is. It is a religious construct.
And it's kind of become hijacked. I was guilty of it. I used to say, I'm not religious, I'm just extremely spiritual. And now, I had to start
I'm not in that box, I'm in this box.
What does that even mean?
Yeah. What does that mean?
So you got these articles coming out about the false light, and I saw one on N5D the other day, and he basically threw everything he had against the New Age movement. And it's big because you go into any Barnes & Noble, and the New Age section is huge now. It's actually the fastest growing category of books on the planet today is New Age.
New Age, and not fastest growing category of religion.
And you know what?
New Age.
You could look at that and you could say, okay, well, shit, we're adopting these new set of beliefs for these old ones, But to me, I see it more from, I don't want to call it an expanded state, but I see the using that as a data point for a high percentage and population of people that are exploring a new area that didn't exist to them before. I didn't know what New Age was until probably 2009 or 2010. I walked in the section. I walked in the bookstore.
Slow off, but no.
Oh, I'm a newbie. You know, I was busy. I was in college before that, and I was focused on
Drinking
partying
beer
and girls and stuff. Not to say I'm not focused on those things now, but maybe a lot less so. If you start to, for me personally, I can only share it from my own personal perspective, is I see all of this, it's all information, and I'm much less likely to adopt information and anchor it within myself as fact or as part of me if I didn't have the experience personally. I was guilty of it. I read everything. I read every blog. I read every channeling, and if enough people were telling the same story, well, then it must be real.
True.
It must be real. You can't have all these channels saying that December 21st is, it's impossible. There's too many people collaborating the same story. That's probably because everybody's buying into everybody else's story, and so now it's like...
Well, they're all being fed the same information from the same source.
Yeah, the same source,
I've
exactly.
redesigned for me
The same
what it
divine
means
source.
to believe in something. I've started to see beliefs for what they are as being more of a construct. Really, that's really dangerous to anchor in. I had an ex-girlfriend that all she wanted to know, it was about religion. Just tell me what you believe. It's like, you can't take all these things from all these different religions and they're all your favorite parts. You can't do that.
Sure you can.
Why?
Why not?
Well, shit, I just did. What does that mean for me? Am I damned to hell? And she really thought that. She thought she was one of those people that thought that the Dalai Lama was going to hell because he didn't praise Jesus Christ as this Lord and Savior. And so now it's like, what I define as my own beliefs are temporary, based on a limited amount of data that's subject to change in any moment. So what I believe now, I am more than willing and ready to break down the entire wall of what constructs that belief and let the whole thing go if new information comes into play that challenges it in any way. Mm-hmm. And so from that perspective, I'm fluid. Yes, Blue Star.
What I'm hearing about this is what you made reference to it earlier when you energetically sent out the shared consciousness around the planet. And that iTech is now moving to frequency, light, and sound. All our tools are invisible. Mm-hmm. And all the religions and philosophies have always pointed to the one essential message that still stands now. In the end, you cannot define the unknowing, the mystery. All right, so we are essentially at the place where we're being asked to, will you jump already and just stay in your internal tech? Don't use anything external. And what you said earlier, Lisa, the language is external. The language is built to be a boundary in a box. Mm-hmm. It was built as part of the deception. So that, to me, is where we are right now. We are the main event when we absolutely turn to the internal.
Mm.
Well said.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you have the seen and you have the unseen. And we're in this permanent cycle of constantly working to evaluate the seen using the senses. Mm. And that's just one...
And a language.
That's just one level of our existence that represents this when this is going on.
Yeah.
And we're stuck here. It's like a little lane. It's like, okay, what can I evaluate? Okay, I'm going to evaluate what this guy's saying or what I heard over here or what I tasted or whatever. And that's limiting to the extent that there's so much more going on.
One thing I wanted to go back, though, and talk about with kind of a quick skip back from what we were talking about before. We talked about the New Age movement, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
We talked about these different belief systems. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I think is really important is that each one of these perceived groups, be it like, your Nasara people, your Swiss Indo, be it the different channeled messages, the New Age groups, etc. They've all done an amazing job of helping people break free. Even if it's just a small piece that they've played. Look, even Keenan actually made a big impact on people to wake up with his trillion-dollar lawsuit, which was all a joke. Anyway, we won't get into that. Even that, even people that we perceive as being cabal or anything, they have made a radical difference to people waking up. And you don't have to believe even the New Age movement. I followed through on this too. I read all the channeled messages. I don't even want to think about how many books I bought. But it put you forward. It moved you forward to breaking out of a certain confine and opening you up to those new ideas and new thoughts. And that's very freeing, because that's what we're talking about today, is basically freeing ourselves of the old programming.
This is why, they say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
It's funny because Mel and I were just having a conversation yesterday. She's reading the Final Testament book that I gave her. And a really good book, but she got to a part in the book where the main character talks about there's no such thing as reincarnation. And it was a trigger. And I remember that exact part of the book because it triggered me too. And I was like, I considered not reading any farther, even though it was a fiction.
Yep.
and I got to a point, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to keep going because I don't want to let this one statement throw me off. But she actually quit. She's like, I had to put the book down. And I knew before she even told me. She said, I put it down. And I said, let me guess, it was because of the part where the guy said there's no such thing as reincarnation. She goes, yeah. I go, that part almost made a lot of people quit reading that book. And then I was able to explain to her, I said, look, the reason why this particular character made this statement is because the purpose was he wanted to get people to stop focusing on what happens in the afterlife. So many people, religion is designed around that. They want you they want you to feel like you have to work your whole life to earn your way into heaven. And so that there's this focus on what happens when you die. Anyways, there's all this value to be gained from this fictional piece. But because of this one piece, it's like, okay, I'm throwing the whole thing out. And it's like, what happens if we do that with all the information that's given to us? We really are going to lose so much good quality shit that it's going to be, it's unfortunate.
You know what, that is the place where actually I am right now, because we all know that Danny has certain trigger words that make her head just...
Divine.
Makers. Yeah. And I'm trying to work my way around that and say, okay, look, if I take this word out of that sentence, that trigger word out.
It's like sovereign, rather.
Well, sovereign. But, there are these words, and they trigger each of us differently. The Wingmaker document, the 5th interview, when we were reading that out, there were certain words that just made me go, ugh. Okay, but if I take those out, and just keep reading, and it's just because there is those breaks I have. So to get past those and to accept what pieces come from it, right? So you're not going to agree with 100% of every document, article, video that comes out. But if you can keep an open mind enough to know that maybe it's just one sentence, maybe it's just one sentence in that article that you were going to go, but if you throw the baby out with the bathwater, you never give it a chance to even get to that sentence.
Yep.
Okay, so we're rounding up, getting up to our 2-hour mark, bringing it back to iTech and the beliefs that we may hold around that.
Yeah.
And I think I want to just kind of finish off by giving what is my absolute now moment thoughts on it, because I know they're going to change. That the whole concept of ascension that we've been given is that, it's really kind of multifaceted and multi-layered in that essentially we're told that humanity is kind of weak and ineffectual.
Flawed.
We are the bottom rung of the ladder, and that we need all of this assistance and help. And
we need to be told.
Saved. Someone's doing
Yep.
it for us, right? Mm-hmm. That's the first belief that I had to completely throw out. And that what I've ended up with is a belief based on not stuff that I've been told, not based on what I've read, but absolutely based on my own personal experience, is that this is the peak. It's the leading edge, as Abraham would say, of creation. Mm-hmm. And that it's pushing through this that we ascend. Yep. No, we're not going anywhere. I'm not going back up the way I came.
Yeah.
And that if that's the case, then everything has to come out of this. And that includes what I can do in my dreams, what I can do when I meditate, what I can do whenever I go anywhere that's perceived to not be here.
Mm-hmm.
And
what you see, what you hear, what you sense in that split moment that is relevant. It's not just some fanciful, daydream.
And it's not just my imagination.
It's not just your imagination.
Because I've done, what do we call it? Our energetic doings. Some of the jobs that we've done. From the outside looking in, it consists of a group of people sitting around with their eyes closed, imagining. Mm-hmm. And yet we know, because we've had physical, tangible, real-world, documented and reported on results.
Confirmations of what we've done.
What is it? Yeah, I mean, if we can affect this reality in such a way, just through our imagination, through our conscious intent, and then where is that energy going? Mm-hmm. I mean, these are all just questions.
Yep,
right,
I get it.
To contemplate, but where does that energy go? That it then turns around and has a very physical and tangible result. And why?
Does it go anywhere?
And why? Or does it even go anywhere? I mean, for me, I have an internal visual of how this all works, and it's what feels right for me based on my experience and how my body just actually reacts to it all. But everything that we've talked about in terms of this iTech, for me, it's absolutely not something that has to be switched on. It is on.
It is on.
It is the very chemistry, biology, the fabric of the suit itself is what is. It's what it is. It's what it was designed for. And I know it's only a simple, and it is simple. I think that when we look back in hindsight at this and we'll go, oh my God, seriously? That's all it took? It was just that? But whatever that little switch is, whatever that is, and it's a mental one.
Mm-hmm. I guarantee 100%. It's mental.
Yep.
Or is it logical?
Well, that's where the fallacy lies in what we were talking about earlier with Tremolo Melchizedek and his activation following a set of protocol. Because the protocol that I ultimately use to unlock or gain more conscious access to my iTech isn't necessarily about what you're going to use to access yours. Or you and yours. I mean, there could be 7.4 whatever billion people there are on the planet, different ways of going about doing this. But I think that now I'm catching myself and about to say I do believe. I do feel that something about the popcorn popping analogy has always resonated for me.
Yeah.
Where you have all these beings, and as each one unlocks their own abilities or gains access to their own conscious abilities, they trigger a domino effect in the rest of the collective. Mm-hmm. And the popcorn is popping right now already. It's been popping since the beginning of the experiment. But you get to that climax point, that critical mass, where all of a sudden the fucking bag starts erupting, you know, and it's just, and where I feel like we have the ability to let go of is, no, this is my prop.
Yes, but
Yeah,
when
but
you bang on the table, it bangs on the mic.
Is releasing the expectation that needs to look a certain way based on a certain timeline.
Exactly.
Because that's where we struggle. That's the greatest cause of our struggle on so many levels. It's not happening yet. When's it going to happen? When can I do this? When am I going to be able to do that? Sorry about the tapping.
Take the pen away from him.
I'll just
Can't
use
have
my
that.
fingers so they don't tap as
There
loud.
you go.
And that surrender to the expectation of it happening based on a certain set of preconditioned beliefs or understandings, or based on some linear time schedule.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And how it's going to work for you versus me versus...
It's like, can I get to the place within me where I'm absolutely content with my universe, with my reality as I've designed it in this moment, exactly how it looks, exactly how it feels, even though I can see the light of a bigger picture of what's within the realm of possibility? Can I accept this moment? And if the answer is yes, that comes with loads of benefits, you know, and lots of perks. You know, it's like surrendering to what is. There's so much power in that, and it's one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah, let go of, and it comes back to going back to what we started saying at the very beginning about the short waves and the long waves, the fear versus the absolute love. If you're paying energy into continuously worrying, fearing, being angry with this, and this, then that's where your energy is going. And you're not content then. And that's why I know when people listen to the conversation we had last week, when I made the flippant comment about the whole United States debt and all the rest of it, and I don't fucking care. I don't. Because you just get to the point of just like,
Okay,
I
hang
can't
on,
be bothered
question
spending any more energy analyze. Even it comes down to the reason I stopped doing Transpicuous News as a daily news rundown was, of course, the internet, et cetera, and we had so much going on here. But when internet came back and I had the time, I sat there and went, do I really want to spend 3 hours a day, because that's really how much time it took me to put each one of those articles together, going through all the mainstream media stories, all the alternative media stories,
Piecing it all together.
Cutting and pasting, and then formatting it so it all look nice and neat. Do I really want to pay that much energy into that? No, I don't.
Before you keep going and go too far away from
Yes.
the thing that triggered my question.
Okay, go.
Stop tapping. Okay, we've all noticed, and we've talked about before, the idea that... Sorry, I'm going to yawn. The idea that we only shift when we're uncomfortable. That a lot of the people who went down the whole remedy, strawman, sovereign movement were because they were in a position of discomfort at losing their home, at facing prison, whatever the trigger was. That when you're happy and relaxed and comfortable,
Things are comfortable.
you don't tend not to expand. So if fear and discomfort have been the motivating forces for us as a collective to actually grow and expand, maybe the question now to ask ourselves is, do we need that any longer? Do I need to put myself in these really uncomfortable, tight, painful situations in order to move forward? Or am I just going to dedicate myself to that regardless? Is that now my mission? And I'm going to do it with ease and grace and gratitude and joy, and that's a choice. I think we all have the ability to make that choice.
And I think we can all say, at least
Well,
here in this house, of saying, no.
Well,
I don't need the fear and the uncomfortable and anymore.
Perception is always going to guide
Yeah.
that experience.
Yep.
Because you could either have a total resistance to what's occurring that causes the fear and uncomfortability that's resulting in the expansion. You take the complainer archetype. There's one that's been running around, for that. I'm not going to name names, but it's basically represents a total lack of acceptance of reality. It's constantly complaining about everything to where there's no acceptance. I'm the victim. Why is this always happening to me? I can never seem to catch a break. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that things that are uncomfortable continuing to manifest over and over and over and over again. Do we need that? Absolutely not. If we have this ability to find this level of absolute acceptance of everything that's we're attracting, because we realize that there's purpose behind all of it, and there's something to be gained from all of it, suffering kind of goes away.
But also using
because
what
our
you talked
response
about
isn't
before, the whole
pain.
moment when a woman lifts the car because the child's trapped. That to me is a moment of internal tech coming online.
Yeah.
You've just used this physical body in a way that blows all limitations and expectations out of the water.
Yep.
That's an iTech moment.
Yes.
But do I need to have my child trapped in a car upside down
For that to happen.
for it to happen? I'm not going to make that choice. I'm going to choose for that to come out through an act of love, through an act of joy, through an act of whatever it is I choose.
Yep.
I don't want it to be like that.
Yeah. Well, I had a situation in Malta where Logan, my 6-year-old, had gotten an extreme fever. And when he gets a fever, he gets fevers more easily than my other kids. But when he flashes on like that, he literally becomes delirious. It's scary. And I have seen pre-symptoms, if you want to call it, of febrile seizures that could come with that. So he was sick. He started coming, and he went from 0 to 60 in a matter of about 5 minutes, where his fever went from normal to 104. And all I could think of was like, his fever needs to come down now. And I sat him on my knee, and I said, Mommy's going to give you some energy. And I literally, it was that extreme moment of, and I literally just, the energy poured out of my body, of every fiber. It wasn't just my hands, it was out of my chest. It was every fiber of my body. And when I was done, in a matter of 10 minutes, his temperature went, and it was down to normal, and his eyes, he was back. He was cognizant again. He understood what was going on. I got him settled on the couch, and we got him something to watch, and we just had a quiet time, and everything was fine. The backlash on me was about 5 minutes later. I was like, oh my God, my whole body is collapsing in and of itself, because it was so hugely powerful what came through. And then I sat there and was like, okay, why that reaction? Why did I go through that physical reaction afterwards? Almost like coming down from an adrenaline rush.
Well, I was going to say that's probably exactly what it was.
And that's exactly it. And then I sat there and was like, okay, so I just cured, if you will, his fever instantly. Why did it have to be in that moment of mom panic? This has to be done, where the adrenaline pours in. I should be able to now do this at any point in time, just because knowing I have just done that, therefore I can do it, and I can do it calmly. And I have done it since then, because now I know here that I've already done it once, therefore I should be able to repeat it at any point in time.
It's almost like it gets turned on because of the perception of necessity.
Exactly.
This just brought up a memory for me. When we were in Nerja, I had a conversation with a guy that was telling me about a TV show that Stan Lee, the comic book guy, he's doing it. He does it. It's supposedly happening right now, and I haven't looked for it on YouTube yet. But if anybody wants to go out and look for it, he did a show. I think it was called Finding Superhumans. And every week he went out basically to find someone, and this is in my words, who has unlocked their iTech. So I actually, once we're done with this, I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to try to find it. And that makes it very real.
It does, doesn't it?
You know, it makes it very real. So it begs the question, what is the ingredient that allows us to use it not in a state of necessity and desperation?
Right.
And that we have that ability, we're just trying to figure out what it is. Yeah.
Knowing?
Well, the only thing that we can change is our perception. So it's our relationship to those events that allows them to no longer exist in the way that we had participated in them before. So everything drives us back to that internal I-tech once again, and the I am presence. Because when we begin to recognize our sovereign integral, our sovereign being, our relationship does change to all the externals.
Yep. It's like Heather says, it's one thing to believe that you are a creator. It's another thing to
Experience.
know that you are a creator, and it's a whole other level to actually experience yourself as creator. And I think that that's probably a good place to maybe start wrapping it up. Let's all set the intention to start experiencing ourselves with these,
I have an idea.
abilities.
How about we ask everyone over the course of the next few days before next week's show to look back and look at those moments where they have used their own iTech, and to write in and talk about them, and we can read them out, because it's one of those things again where you talk about when people hear it, it's not just Brian or Lisa or Dee or Dear Woman, or it's this person here who's in Australia, and that person who's in Canada, and that person who's in England and the States, and who's just listening to the show, right? So maybe we need to bring these stories out more and really focus on, let's talk about some of these examples.
So please put them, if you have any, in the comment section on the website under this episode.
Yeah.
And we can bring them out and talk about them next week.
Yeah. Awesome.
So thank you. And like I said, like we've all been saying, that this is a progressive step, this format, and we will get back to being live. And we miss you guys, and we miss the interaction. And thank you for joining us again.
Peace and
Bye-bye,
love, y'all.
everyone. Bye for now.
Broadcasting a new paradigm on the One Network.